Hello and welcome to a live photo critique. I am here by my lonesome self. Patrick is still in Charleston. I should have queued up some footage. Maybe I could queue up some footage real quick. So Patrick has renovated the studio, or he's in the process of it, and today was demo day. Let me see if I can find a clip to show you guys, because it is crazy in this room. Let me see if I can share this with you guys. Screen mirroring, living room. Was demo day. Here we go. Let me see if I can find a clip to show you guys. So you guys probably don't remember what our studio looked like, but this is what it looks like now. Absolute war zone. So Patrick has a lot of work left to do, obviously, but I think he wanted to stay in Charleston and just make sure this was all done correctly, and then he's going to have contractors come in and actually bid on the job to rebuild everything out. But it's crazy. All right, let me disconnect this. If you guys would like to be a part of the next critique, go over to fstoppers.com/contests, and you can go to the link in the description below. I put it in there for you. The next critique is going to be on top-down photography. So we want to see you directly over the top of a subject shooting straight down. We don't want to just see you shooting from a high vantage point. We want to see you truly shooting perpendicular down towards the ground. You could use a drone, or you could use, tabletop photography with food, whatever, something like that. Hopefully I fixed the audio. Sorry, I had an extra window on the computer, so you might have heard me for a second. It should be fixed now. Let's get to this critique. If you guys are watching right now live on fstoppers.com, click over to YouTube, and you can join in the conversation with everyone. This is the highest rated image of the critique. And I guess before anything else, I will rate it. This is a winner of a free tutorial on fstoppers.com/store. Congratulations. I am going to give this image 3 stars. And I'm not sure if this is too harsh. I think I've been a little bit jaded working with Alaya for so long now, and going to just amazing places and shooting photos, long exposure photographs of waterfalls. It's been done a million times, and it's been done really well. I feel like maybe the colors in this, or the post-processing, is a little bit overdone for my taste. And so that's why I give it 3 stars and not 4 or 5 stars. Let's see who took this and what they have to say about it. Jose Marvin Evasco. He says this was taken at Niagara Falls, and he used a 10-stop neutral density filter to create the silky smooth water and streaking cloud effects. Again, I feel like I like it, I don't love it, and we did get some really cool submissions for this critique. So this is definitely not my favorite, although it was all of your favorites. This was the highest rated image at 3.34 stars. And by the way, guys, I know I say this every time, but I'm trying to do like 10 things at once right now. So I'm probably not going to be able to get to everyone's comments as they're leaving them. But if anybody does leave a super chat, I may not see it when you leave it, but I'll make sure to eventually get to it in time. I picked 11 pictures that really stood out to me for this critique, and 3 of them were all taken by the same photographer, but I had no idea. You can just tell that good photographers tend to take consistently good photos. So this photo was taken by Christian Kotz, and 2 other photographs ended up being taken by him as well for this critique. And you can tell he is a very talented sports photographer, and you'll be able to see when we get to more of his images. I'm going to rate this one 4 stars. I think I love this. I feel like this is sports photography. This is I'm blanking on the word right now, but newspaper type photography. I think this is jumping into the realm of fine art with the blurriness and everything. I love this. I feel like this is so much better than your average shot of fencing. And maybe this is done all the time with fencing photography, maybe to make all fencing shots look better. Everybody does the long exposure shot. But there seems to be more going on here than just your average long exposure. It seems like the camera's moving more than the people are moving. I mean, look at the ground by their feet down there. I don't think the ground's moving. So I think he's actually moving the camera around while they're fighting. And I've mentioned this before, but I did a little bit of fencing myself in college. So I like to consider myself an expert. Their form looks good. That's all I know. He says this was taken in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in August of 2016. He gives his camera specs. I'm sure you guys don't really care about that, but his shutter speed is 1/5 of a second. I think this image is awesome. And community gives it 3.17 stars. Let's see. Next up. Now, speaking of fine art, I mean, talking about artistic eye and perfection, beauty, once in a lifetime opportunity. I mean, this photograph has it all. This was taken by Jacket Aplowski. I think that's how you pronounce that name. Basically, he says that he had this idea to get the model or the butt in focus in the glass of water. So it was supposed to be that the butt was in focus in the glass of water and then blurry in the background. But he couldn't pull it off. And I'm sure you've seen photographs like this before, maybe with like a drip of water, and the drip of water is reflecting maybe a map of the world in the background, and it looks like a little globe is falling, but it's just a drip of water. He was trying to do that with the glass, but it failed. He couldn't actually get her in focus in the glass, but he ended up liking this shot with the glass in focus. What would I rate this? I'm always trying to think, when I give something 3 stars or above, 3 stars is it's a solid image, it's ready for your portfolio. And I always try to think, what type of portfolio would this go into, and would this help you get more work? And yes, there's like a boudoir, there's a nude photography industry and everything like that, but it's kind of hard to put that stuff on your website if you do anything else. Like, you wouldn't put this on a wedding photography website or a product photography website, a commercial photography website. You'd turn off all your clients, right? So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards giving this a 2 star. I feel like it's an okay image, but it's not done at such a high level that it would fit on some incredibly high-end fashion photographer's website. It doesn't feel that high-end. Now, Now, if you shoot boudoir type stuff, then I give this 3 stars. And I think it could go in your portfolio, but it's not blowing my mind. I mean, aspects of it are, but it's not doing much for me. Community gives this one 2.83, so I think you guys kind of agree with me here. Let's see what's next. This one's pretty interesting. I think maybe my biggest critique with this image right off the bat is I feel like there's a little issue with the white balance. I don't know if you guys feel the same way or you let it slide because of all the red and you're like, yeah, she's a little yellow, it's okay. But it feels like, I don't know, I might even want to see this in black and white. But I like the red. I like all the red. I just don't like the fact that it's like there's no human skin tone on her. And so because of that, it feels like this has been manipulated in post when I don't think it has been. I think this is probably naturally what it looks like. Let's see. This was taken by Emily Moore. Let me go ahead and rate this. I'm in between a 3 and a 4 star on this. I feel like I like the model, I like the lighting, I like the background, I like the red on red, I like the pose, I like the styling. It's really just the skin tones. And I'm not a skin tone guy. I'm not one of these guys that is always talking about Fuji skin tone colors. But this just feels a little manipulated for my taste. I'm going to be nice. I'm giving it 4 stars. Emily Moore, I went ahead and read this before I went live. And it's not exactly clear what she did here. But I think she says she uses 4 lights. I'll just quickly read this. Maybe you guys will understand. 1 white light with a 10-degree grid as the key light. So that's the light that hit the model. 1 gelled red light on the background behind. 1 red gelled light from below. And 1 red gelled light with reflector kept on through the long exposure to capture the movement through the 3-second exposure. What I don't fully understand is what's moving. Did the model step into the frame and the camera stationary? Or did you move the camera? It's kind of hard to tell. The background makes it seem like there's almost something totally different going on in the background than on her. But if you notice, she's got like a little double take on her hat, which shows some movement there. So I'm not exactly sure how this was taken and what was moved, but I'm a big fan of this image. I think it's really nice. This image is very, very interesting to me. I've seen lots of great surfing photos. This one really stands out to me as something very different. And when I first saw it, I couldn't put my finger on why I liked it so much. And after reading what he did to this, before I read it, you guys try to figure out like what's going on in this image, what makes this kind of look as magical as it does. There definitely seems to be some manipulation on the water, like dodging and burning or something, and then like to get that blurry sky, I mean, is that a tilt shift lens? What's going on? How obviously he's not that close to the surfer to have the surfer in focus and the sky out of focus. Well, Miguel Martins took this and he said he added a new sky in the photo and blurred it in Photoshop. And then he's done some light and shadow adjustments in Lightroom, I would assume, to the wave itself. So when I read that, I was like, oh, okay, not quite as cool. You know, you did it in Photoshop. But I'm always the first person to say it shouldn't matter how you got the image. The only thing that matters is the finished image. Your clients aren't going to read about how every image was taken. they're just going to look at it and go, well, yeah, we got to hire that guy. That's awesome. We want our surfing ad to look just like that. So for that reason, I'm going to rate this image 5 stars. This is one of my favorite images of the critique. I really like it. I don't know. I bet a lot of people watching this probably think this is a lame image, but there's just something about the lighting on the surfer and the lighting on the background and the interesting detail in the wave. I don't know. I just really dig this image. So hopefully you guys like it too. Community liked it all right. 3.18. I dig it. Guess who took this shot? The same guy. I should have known. I should have known. Oh, actually, I'm wrong. This is another person. Oh, well, let me look and see, because we've got one more sports shot coming up. Okay. So this is another sports photographer. Cool. This was taken by Matevž Gradisek. Absolutely how you pronounce it. He said he was photographing the famous Planica, and this was shot during the World Cup ski flying competition. Single frame, no Photoshop manipulation. It's a risky type shot, so I was lucky to get a few decent ones that day. So this is another one that I'm trying to figure out. How did he do this? Is it really doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how he did this. I mean, without the ski jumper, I would assume, oh, he's just zooming into that crowd. And you can see like the point right where he's zooming in, and everyone else is, it's creating that blur effect with a slightly long exposure. But how did he get the crowd in focus at that point in the bottom left, and then also get the ski jumper mostly in focus? And I'm trying to think of like physics and how this would work. Like maybe it is just a quick zoom in, zoom out. It just isn't making sense in my mind. It seems like the ski jumper would be pulled just as much as the crowd behind him. I'm probably very wrong about this. I'm going to go over to YouTube and see what you guys are saying in the chat. How do you think this was done? Nobody seems to have an answer yet. I don't know. Now, what would I rate this? This feels very much like a 90s Sports Illustrated photograph to me. Something that would be very impressive to see with a film camera. Something about the colors also feel kind of 90s to me. But I'm not sure it's as impressive now with digital cameras and Photoshop and everything. I'm gonna give it 3 stars. It feels wrong to do that because I feel like this is a really cool image. And this feels like some image, if this was taken in 1995, it would be the cover of some incredible, magazine about the Olympics or something. But I don't know. This is such a hard one for me to rate. Let me go back over to YouTube, see if anybody has come up with a theory on how this was taken. The photographer is jumping with the skier. Well, that can't be the case, right? I don't think, I've definitely seen like in the snowboard competitions and the normal like trick ski jumping competitions and stuff, the photographers and videographers will come down with them and they will film them while they do these crazy jumps. I don't think they do that with ski jumping. I don't think so. But now that you mention that, and I'm like looking at this entire shot, it certainly does appear like the photographer is up, way above them, shooting down. I wonder if they're shooting with a really telephoto lens, and that zoom is really exaggerated. I don't know. I don't know. I wish this photographer had been a little bit more clear on how they had taken this. Make sure you guys, if you sign up for the next critique, once again, go to fstoppers.com/contest. Make sure you write what you think other photographers would be interested in knowing, like what was difficult about the shoot, what, a happy mistake that happened or whatever. And then I'll talk about it when we go live. Next up. This image was not one of the highest rated images, but I really liked it when I saw it. And I really liked it until I had already chosen to put it in here. And then right before going live, I read what they had done to this. And then I noticed something about it that I no longer liked anymore. So I probably would have given this either 3 or 4 stars before. I'm going to give it 2 stars now. Steve Binder took this, and he said he shot this at a local stream. And I'm like, reading, awesome, cool, I love it. There's just enough blur here for you to see the movement. It almost looks like hair or something. Really like it. But then he says, with the top blurred out to give an ocean wave effect. So when I saw this, I thought this was the ocean. But I think what he's done is he's cut out the top of the water and then he just Gaussian blurred the sky. And I didn't notice this at first, but when you start zooming in here, you can see how bad the cutout is around this water. And I did not notice that, and that's why I ended up choosing this image for this critique, because I was like, this image is awesome. And now, all I can see is just bad Photoshop. And the other thing that's kind of weird about this image is I feel like it's a little too washed out. I think I'd like to see the shadows brought down a little bit, crushed just a little bit more. I don't need to see like blacks, but I just want to see a little bit more shadow in this image. At least on my screen here, it looks a little too monotoned. And then, I'm so curious what this looks like without the photoshopped sky. I would imagine it loses a lot of magic without the photoshopped sky, because with the photoshopped sky, it does feel like an ocean. It makes these waves look huge. But this is probably taken in like a little pool of water like this. And if the Photoshop was done better, I think I would still really love it. But all I can see now is just that like cheap cutout, the lasso tool around the top of the water. So it bums me out. Next up. This one was taken by an F-Stoppers writer, Mads Peter Iverson. He says, and this is pretty interesting, and this is why I like when you guys write about your posts, because I have been to Iceland, and I have been in these ice caves that are gigantic, So I just assumed that this was taken in like, a similar style ice cave type thing. But Mad says, a hard and risky image to get, as I had a 12mm full frame lens all the way below a piece of ice. The ice was less than a meter above the ground, and I had to squeeze the camera in there. So he's not in a cave at all. He's just like squeezing it under a little piece of ice that's over some water, and then taking a long exposure, and then of course, by either stopping down and getting that deep depth of field or doing some sort of focus stacking here, it appears like this is a giant cave. So that's really interesting. I did not expect that at all. And then, the other thing, when you blur the water, it's very difficult to tell how close or far away you are from the water, because instead of being able to see all the details and the splashes of water, which would give it away, now you just see rushing water movement, and you just have to look at other things like ice and try to guess, like, is that ice big or small? And obviously I was very wrong when I first saw this image. What do I rate it? I don't love it. I just kind of talked about how this image kind of blew my mind, but it wasn't because I'm like, whoa, amazing image. It kind of just blew my mind because I thought it was a big ice cave and it's not. I don't know, like this type of image feels very like 500px, and that sounds bad. There's like incredible photos on 500px, but it feels like photographers showing images for other photographers. It does not feel like an image you put on your website to get hired by any sort of client. Is that fair? Does that make sense? And part of that is because, you know, you're taking a picture of like your photography buddy, or you're on a photography tour and you're capturing other photographers doing their thing. But I think there are ways to capture photographers in an image and have it look like a professional commercial photograph that could be stock or, shot for some commercial purpose. This feels like it could just be used as like, come to my Icelandic photo tour. Like that's all this image feels like it could be used for me. And so for that reason, I probably wouldn't put it in my portfolio. But I don't know that I can give it 2 stars. I probably give it 3 stars. It's all right. I like it all right. Don't love it. Now this one is taken by the same photographer that took the fencing shot, Christian Kotz. This was taken at the Olympics as well in 2016 in Brazil. Obviously Usain Bolt. Nikon D4S 200mm lens. ISO 640, aperture 22, shutter speed 1/30th of a second. Now I wonder why he shot at f/22. Why didn't he stop down to like an f/8 and also lower the ISO? I wonder if there was a reason for that, or he was probably, I mean, as a sports photographer, you're probably jumping between like, okay, I got to get one shot of him running in focus and I got to get another shot of him running, and I'm going to try to do the blur. I don't have time to change all my settings here, so all I'm going to change, he says he's also shooting in shutter priority mode, so he's probably just flipping that shutter, you know, up high and then going down to 1/30th of a second, trying to get the exact same shot. Obviously, for this shot, diffraction is not a big deal. Shooting at f/22, if it's not quite as sharp, obviously not a big deal because there's not a single thing totally in focus in this shot. Look at how good the ground looks in the bottom of this image. Look at how perfectly straight those white lines are. How in the world you think he's on a panhead of some kind? I assumed that he did this handheld, but that's probably stupid. He probably, I mean, what do most sports photographers at the Olympics have? Monopod? It just looks like he has a perfect, well, look at this. There's a little error maybe right down here. You can see this. Just like double up, but other than that, it goes perfectly straight across the rest of the shot. Anyway, I love this image. I think this is so much more interesting than just a sharp image of someone running. I think it's in focus enough, but there's still enough blur. Like obviously we have tons of blur on the legs and stuff, but just enough blur on the hands to still really add a lot of interest to this. I think it's great. I give this 4 stars. For sure, I love this image. And really cool that we have an Olympic photographer submitting images. I was thinking, oh man, maybe he should definitely win the tutorial. And I'm like, he probably doesn't need or want one of our tutorials. Now, I did say with this critique that I didn't want to see, just shallow depth of field portraits. But this one specifically stood out to me as really well done. And I felt like they really used blur more than your average shallow depth of field picture, and I loved it, so I threw it in here. This was taken by Jacob Everett, and he goes into a little bit of detail. Most of his detail, he just says that he has discovered the power of local dodging and burning for skin retouching and has swapped that out for frequency separation. I'd love to see exactly what he's doing. I feel like the retouch on this looks great. When I first saw this image, I assumed that the balls of light were behind her because they kind of follow. If you look at this left side of her head here, they follow kind of the side of her head. And so I just assume like, oh, all those lights are behind her. And then, I guess there's a little ball of light on the bottom right down here. But then I noticed that there, on the upper right of this shot, there are lights, that are going over the top of her hat here. So I think potentially he's hanging these lights around the front of the lens and shooting through them. I think that's what he's done. And then potentially they're reflecting in her glasses. I would imagine the ones around the camera are reflecting in her glasses and not the ones in her hands. I don't think you'd be able to see that from that angle. And I wish I had a higher res image so that I could see if I could, see the camera in the glasses or in her eyes, but I can't see it. I give this image at least 4 stars. I'm tempted to give this 5 stars. I mean, I really love it. Maybe you could say this is super cliche, and he even mentions this as well. He says the neon butterfly has become somewhat of a portrait editing trend on the gram, so I thought I'd add my 2 pennies. So maybe this is super cliche. I just feel like this is done really well. I feel like she's styled well. She looks great. Those glasses are super cool. The reflection in the glasses, the pose with the arms holding the lights, and then all those bokeh balls surrounding her. I don't know. I'm a big fan of this image. I don't think I have anything else to say. And I believe this is the final shot of this critique. Let's see who took it. Cohen de Klerk took this. He says the image was captured with a long exposure, 2.5 seconds, where the motion was captured with a Lupolux LED Fresnel with colored gel. The Ballerina was frozen with a bronze color Scoro at 1/8,000th of a second at T.01 flash duration. So I'm trying to figure out, maybe there is a light from camera left, hot light, LED, gelled red, and she's dancing as she's moving from camera left to camera right. She strikes a pose at the end, and then boom, flash fires right at the end to freeze her. I really like it. I think it looks great. I'm trying to think of how I feel about the red color. Does it feel kind of evil to anyone else? I don't know. It's got this like devilish horn or tail, movement in the background from her arms. Maybe you love that, maybe you don't. I don't know. But it definitely feels ominous. I don't know if that was the goal, but I do like this image. I feel like the dancer's pose looks great. Maybe I'd like to see a little bit more of her face. And I don't know how you do that. I don't know if I would raise the light a little bit. If you notice, like the side of her head and her eye socket seems to be completely in shadow. I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of that, but if you raise the light up too much, it might also cast a lot of shadow from her skirt, tutu, down on her legs, and I feel like having the leg and foot lit is very important in this shot. Maybe more important than her face. I'm gonna rate this 4 stars. I really like this. And I just realized I've forgotten to give some community rating on some of the last few shots. Sorry, guys. Once again, you can go over to fstoppers.com/contests and you can see all of the submissions, including these. This one, I believe, was the second highest rated image, maybe. The community rated this 3.3 stars, and because this is the final image, you have also won a tutorial from fstoppers.com/store. Both of you guys that have won the free tutorial, send me a private message on fstoppers.com. Let me know which tutorial you want, and I will send it to you through your fstoppers account. That wraps up this critique. Let me check over YouTube. Oh man, Mr. Moneybags himself, Steve Robertson, is here. He gave a $25 super chat just to say, "What's up, Lee?" Well, guys, the critique is over. If you want to leave, you can leave now. I'll stick around and chat just for a second. There's a few things that are up. If you guys have followed my the coronavirus journals that we started months ago, and we've just sporadically been doing them. It's been weeks since I've done the last one. I may do one tomorrow night. You know that I shorted Tesla. I am still shorting Tesla. And at the moment, it is by far the worst financial decision of my entire life. I shorted Tesla. I think I shorted $30,000 worth of their stock at $650. Their stock went to $2,200 a share in like a month or two. Today, the stock split by 5, and then it went up 12% more today. So I think I have now lost $75,000 so far. And I'm to the point now where I have to decide at what point do I have to pay for this and then just walk away and have lost the money. You know, at the moment I haven't lost the money until I buy the shares because I'm shorting the shares. Luckily, I also put a huge amount of money into gold, and my gold position has made slightly more than my Tesla losses. So basically I am dead even. Throughout this entire pandemic, I'm dead even. Now, if I had perfect 20/20 hindsight, I would have just stayed in the market or gotten in the market when it dropped like 40%, and I would be killing it right now because everything is up for no apparent reason right now. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out like how much more, like what if I lose $100,000? Do I just buy the stock and like get out of this and just go, wow, that was the dumbest decision ever? Or do I keep writing it out? Like, it makes no sense. Tesla is now valued at more than Walmart. And Tesla hardly is even profitable. I read some article today that said Tesla may not be included into the S&P 500 because the only reason they're profitable at all is because they are basically selling these, I forget what they're called, but it's like tax credits that different countries give them that they sell to other car companies that aren't making electric cars. So basically, you have to pay like a penalty if you don't have X amount of your fleet as electric, and Tesla has 100% of their fleet electric, so they get these tax credits, and then they sell these tax credits to companies that don't want to make electric cars yet. So people who are determining if Tesla should be allowed in the S&P, many of them are saying they shouldn't be allowed because they're really not even profitable. And second of all, they would be worth 1% of the S&P 500, which putting them in the S&P 500 could make the stock skyrocket even more because all of these index funds would be forced to buy them. But then also it could screw the S&P 500 because all of these funds would have to sell 1% of their holdings in all of these other stocks. They said they've never included a company that's worth this much, like overnight before. So I don't know what to think about this. Somebody asked, don't I believe in Elon? I definitely believe in Elon. I love Tesla. Elon Musk is like my favorite person on the planet. I do not wish anything bad on Tesla. All I think is that we're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. We're on the verge of a total economic collapse. And I think Tesla is overvalued to begin with. And I think they're going to go through a rough time like every company is over the next few years. And so I just assumed now would be a good... And the truth is, when I did short them, they did go down. They went down to 300. I think I made like 15 grand, something like that, maybe a little bit more. And I was like, nah, they're going to keep going down. So I should have sold. Gosh, I should have sold. The other thing that's going on is we ended up buying the boat that we were talking about buying. So Patrick and I went in with 5 other families, and we bought this crazy like 50-foot boat. And it's got, it's like 15-year-old boat. So it's got a few problems, some things that we need to fix. So we're having some work done on the boat. But the other weird thing is that the current lockdown restrictions here in Puerto Rico forbid anyone from using their private boat. Apparently the coronavirus is waiting out in the ocean to catch us. So even though we could be using the boat that we bought right now, legally we are not allowed to. And the boat has these crazy Volvo engines that need to be worked on, and there's only 3 Volvo mechanics on the island, and apparently 2 of them we've already worked with and they're not trustworthy, so we've worked with this 3rd guy who's great, and apparently he had a stroke yesterday. So I don't know what we're gonna do with this damn boat. But hopefully, the lockdown is supposed to go maybe for another 2 weeks, but it's always been another 2 weeks, and then they just keep extending. So who knows? Steve Robertson said, you mentioned once that you were interested in the C8 Corvette. A year after ordering mine, it came off the assembly line Monday. Blade silver, hardtop convertible. Oh, that's sweet, man. I do really like the new Corvette. Call me a redneck, I don't care. I think it looks awesome. The price is right, when you compare it with other mid-engine cars. The problem is that, I currently live here in Puerto Rico, and I feel like it is the opposite of a Puerto Rico car. We have the worst roads here, crazy potholes. We also have crazy speed bumps in this neighborhood that I feel like would just rip off the bottom of this car. The other thing, Steve just says, people are flipping their C8s for $20,000 profit. So it's interesting because somebody told me when the C8 was announced, I was talking to somebody and he was like, oh, you should buy one and then just drive it for a few months and flip it. I'll bet you make 10 or 20 grand. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should do that. But my wife was like, you crazy, don't do that. So I didn't do it. And then when the C8 started coming out, we were right in the middle of the pandemic craze. And I saw that people were having trouble selling their C8s because everyone was so afraid that the economy was going to crash. Nobody wanted to buy, some luxury car. I don't know if maybe that wasn't true, but certainly and now we're getting into coronavirus stuff, but certainly there has been a total mentality shift. I mean, everyone I know is buying crazy stuff. I just bought a boat. Everyone here in Puerto Rico is buying like a second home. People are moving here from the States faster than I've ever seen before. I'm talking to realtors here in Puerto Rico, and they're saying they've never had this much traffic, this many people buying and selling homes ever. I'm hearing the same thing from my realtor friends in the States. It does not make sense. I don't get it. It seems like what would happen right before a massive crash, but never in a million years would I think, as a pandemic got worse, people would just start buying more stuff. The stock market prices would go up. Tesla wouldn't have any better news, and all of a sudden they would just 5x for no reason. Who would have thought? Not me. Obviously, I am dumb. Photog Mike says, just ask your buddy George Soros for a cool $100,000. Yeah, I don't have access to George Soros. I don't think he'd give me $100,000. So yeah, that's all that's going on at the moment currently in Puerto Rico. Patrick's destroyed our studio. I am going to California in a week to film a project with Mike Kelly. That's the most exciting thing I have on the horizon. So I am looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to Tesla dropping in value. I used to not really care. I was like, oh yeah, I've lost a little bit of money, but yeah, they can't keep going up. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It definitely doesn't make sense, and it's going to continue not making sense. I'm certainly hoping, I've got another buddy here in the neighborhood who today shorted Tesla a ton. So we shall see. Photog Mike says, buy stocks in ramen noodle. It's just like gold now. I don't know if it's gold yet, but in the near future, it could certainly be like gold. All right, guys, I am heading out. I might do a coronavirus journal tomorrow night. We shall see. No promises, but I'll try to come up with something. I will see you guys soon. Forgot which button to hit here. Auto? Yes.